Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Daniela and today I'm going to show you how to make flat even count peyote stitch. We are going to make this nice bracelet together. This is a great stitch for beginners and I think that this is the very first stitch that a bead weaver learns to do, and it's a great jumping off point to do more advanced stitches. We call this stitch flat because the finished beadwork will be a flat surface. There is also a tubular peyote stitch and I will show you this stitch in some of the next tutorial. And we call this stitch even count because we are picking up an even number of beads when we start out. There is also an odd count peyote stitch and also I will show it to you in some of the next videos. I think that this flat even count peyote stitch is so simple that you are going to fall in love with it. So as far as the time is concerned, count about 2 hours to make this bracelet. It depends on your experiences with bead weaving, but even beginners can make it in quite reasonable time, because after you will make 3 or 4 rows it will become a routine. Actually, first 3 rows are always the hardest, but next rows are simple and easy to make. But if 2 hours is too much for you and you want to make it faster, try to simply make less columns, the bracelet will be thinner and it will go faster. So let's get straight into it. First we prepare a bead mat. It's optional, but it's easier to pick up seed beads from bead mat than from the table. Next we need 2 colors of seed beads. I'm going to use 2 colors because you will see the pattern better with 2 colors instead of 1. So I have chosen this blue and this purple beads. This is Toho Round in color Ceylon English Bluebell, and this is also Toho Round and it's in color Silver Line Light Grape. Both are size 11. And we need also some bigger bead that will serve as a stub bead. I'm going to use this small glass pearl. It doesn't matter how it looks because at the end we remove it and it won't be part of our beadwork. Next we need a thread. I'm going to use Eslon in beige color. And we need also a beading needle and scissors. And finally a toggle clasp. You can find a list of all these products with links in the description below. First we cut a piece of thread, cut about 2 meters, we can possibly add some extra thread later. I will show you how to do it. If your thread will be too much long, it will be difficult to work with it. So we cut the thread and thread the needle. We put on our stub bead and bring it down. We leave a tail long enough, about 10 to 15 centimeters is okay. Then we go back through the bead to make a loop around the bead. This stub bead will help us to create tension and keep the rest of the beads we are adding from falling off the end until we make few rows and the beadwork will set up itself. We will remove this bead when our beadwork will be finished. Then we pick up an even amount of seed beads. I'm gonna have my column be 12 beads wide, but you can make yours as wide as you like, just make sure that's an even number. So we pick up 1 blue, 1 purple, 1 blue, 1 purple, it's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. And we bring it down to our stub bead. These 12 beads will create first 2 rows. It can be a little bit confusing at first, but I will explain it in a while. Now we start to make the 3rd row. The principle of even count peyote stitch is easy. We always skip over 1 bead and go through the next bead. I want to make stripe pattern, so I pick up 1 purple bead skip over this purple bead and go through the next blue bead. And tight. You can see that the new bead is sitting next to this one. The first 3 rows are always a little bit messy, so don't give up. Pick up another purple bead, skip over this purple bead and go through the next blue bead and tight. And continue the same way. Pick up another purple bead, skip over this purple bead, go through the next blue bead and tight. Add another purple bead, skip over this purple bead and go through the next blue bead. Again the same, pick up purple bead, skip over this purple bead and go through this blue bead. And the last bead in this row. Ignore this stop bead because this bead is not a part of our beadwork. Now we have 3 rows. First, second and third. And you can see that every second bead is popping up and we always want to fill these gaps between the popping up beads. So in next row we add 1 bead to each gap. But before I do it, I always like to work from bottom up, so I just flip over so my thread is coming out the bottom. So we pick up blue bead, skip over this blue bead and go through the next popped up purple bead and tight. Pick up another blue bead, skip over this blue bead and go through the next popped up purple bead. And continue the same way. So we have made another row and we flip this over so my thread is coming out the bottom. And we pick up purple bead, skip over this purple bead and go through the next popping up bead. And you can see that the stripes are starting to form. In this tutorial I'm using Toho round seed beads, but I also like to work with cylinder beads like Toho Treasure or Mayuki beads. Of course you can use whatever kind of beads you want. I just recommend you to use some quality regular beads like Czech Preciosa or Japanese Toho or Mayuki beads, because if you use some cheap no-name Chinese beads, the beadwork wouldn't look good, it will be hard to work with and you can be disappointed. So we will continue without pattern until we reach the length we want to make a bracelet. Now I'm running out of my working thread, so I'm going to show you how to add some extra thread. It's important to remember where the thread is coming out from, where we ended, because we need the new thread get to the same point. The peyote stitch is perfect for just weaving the thread into our beadwork without making knots. You can if you want, but it's not necessary. So we just go back and pass through a couple of beads, and we go back and forth through the beads and change the direction several times. I like to change direction at least 3 times to be sure that the thread stays in place and won't move. And it's also good to go through the same bead 2 times, like make a little circle. And that's it. Now we cut the thread as close as possible to our beadwork. You don't have to worry, this is super secure even if there are no knots. Now we cut a piece of new thread. Thread the needle. Randomly pick a spot where we start and we go through the beads towards this bead we want the thread coming out from. This is the same bead where we ended without original thread. I will hold this tail until it set up itself. And again we change direction several times to secure this new thread. Now we cut the tail, and now we continue the same way. So we pick up one seed bead. So now we have the length we want to make a bracelet, and now we remove the step bead and weave the tails into our beadwork and add a toggle clasp. So we do it the same way as we added a new thread. We pass through the beads and change direction several times. And I don't want to use a new thread to attach clasp, I want to use this tail to attach my clasp. However, I have to remember if anything is going to break in bracelet, it's usually clasp or the clasp attaching. And if I use this tail to attach the clasp, there is a risk that if the clasp breaks, also a part of the bracelet itself can start coming apart, and then it's harder to repair. So I go through the beads towards the center of the last row. And go under the thread between the beads and make a knot. So if the clasp break, the only thing you have to do is fix this clasp and you don't have to worry about the bracelet because we have this knot. Now we pick up 2 seed beads. Then we go through the one part of the toggle clasp. Now pick up another 2 seed beads and go back through this seed bead in the center. And repeat it several times to secure the toggle clasp. Now we go again under the thread between the beads and make another knot. And again pass through the beads, change direction several times. And finally cut the thread. Now we do exactly the same with the other tail. So we go back through the beads and weave this tail in. And now we go through the beads towards the center of the first row. We go under the thread between the beads and we make a knot. Go through the center bead, pick up 2 seed beads. Then we go through the second part of the clasp, pick up another 2 seed beads, and then we go through the center bead. Go back through the beads. Now go under the thread between the beads and make a knot again. And now we go back through the beads, weave the tail in, and finally we cut the thread. And the bracelet is finished. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments. I'm always happy for your feedback. If you want to see more, don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye!